Little Princess Mirabel. Once upon a time, in an ancient kingdom of Celia, known for her splendor and glory, lived a little cheerful princess by the name Princess Mirabel. Princess Mirabel was a child full of life and adventure. She brightens up any environment she found herself in when she wants to, that the royal household always wakes up to a bustling, busy morning each day. She was adorable to behold, the joy of both her parents. The king adores her, and the queen couldn't have asked for more. Both the maids and menservants stands at attention to her command, with their faces grinning with laughter. But in all these her beautiful, exciting characters lived also her weakness. Little Miss Mirabel, as she was popularly called, is known for her nerve-wracking tantrums. While growing up, she had lived in wealth and riches. She had all that money had to offer, a royalty one with so much dignity, reverenced by all. While others envied and wishes to have a little of what she possesses, little Miss Mirabel found no joy in anything. She's easily prone to anger and frustration, a trait that has come to haunt the royal household. If she's not complaining of how rounded her cheeks were, she will be complaining of how cold the hot soup presented to her is. There is no day that passes without her having one of her tantrum episodes. It hurts both parents to watch helplessly as their daughter grows without any positive change. Medically, she was declared sound. She's just a child and will grow out of it, the royal doctor will confide to the family. There's nothing to worry about. Princess is as sound as a fiddle, he will conclude on each visiting day. The parents believed and hoped for a change, but when days passed and turned to years and no change was seen, in their daughter, their worries increased. Gifts were bought, vacations were taken, name it. The Princess of Celia has it all. Royal children her age was brought to cheer her up, but Princess Mirabel will not have such according to her. Those children are only there for her toys and never loved her. But that is not true, Princess. Prince James, her childhood friend, will respond swiftly with a frowning face. And that was how her little friends will get offended each time they come to spend time with her. The problem has become so much a burden to her parents that the king was forced to confide in people he wouldn't have seen fit to confide in. He was willing and ready to do anything to restore her daughter's happiness. If only she can smile, if only she can leave a day without sniffling, the king will mutter in frustration. Is there no one that can help out the princess in this kingdom? The king will scream, his nerve-giving way. At this point, the royal doctors will be called to see that the king is in perfect health. I think she hates me, the king will mutter, like a child, in the company of his household. She seems to mock me. Oh, Donald, do not speak such nonsense. The queen will cut in. You know the child adores you, she will softly say, holding firmly the king's hand in hers. As the doctor checks his vitals, I just think she's bored. The king will respond hastily, blinking his eyes in disbelief. What else could it be, my darling? The queen will say, her gaze at her husband's. Yes, you must be right, Catherine. The princess is bored. Take her to a zoo, the king will suddenly decree. And that was how the royal household had continued to deal with little Princess Mirabel's trouble. The king gradually was getting nerve-wrecked as a result. The queen sniffles at any little provocation. She denied them peace and orderliness. Her energy was a tough one to deal with, and together they managed the situation. Until one day, a day that her tantrum was at its peak, nothing could calm her down. Not even her grandmother's ridiculous bedtime stories, nor her parents' hugs and kisses could calm her. But as the royal family was about giving up, both of her parents exhausted and frustrated, they were about placing a call to a doctor when the royal male servant walked in. A frail figure trotted behind him. A little boy, the same age with Princess Mirabel. But one thing, glaring as they approached, was that he was a commoner. Mere looking at his appearance, one could see that he's going through hard time. His cheekbones has given him away as he stood facing Princess Mirabel. He was almost clothed in rags, his hair unkempt, his eyes rolls up and down. The entire room, the king and queen, was taken aback as they watched. The maid stood speechless. All of a sudden, there was an unseemly quietness in the room. all watched the little boy in rags as he drew closer to where the princess was sitting. "Permit me to present my friend, Master Richard," the elderly royal male servant cried out. "What in the heaven's name is this?" the king muttered, looking confused. "Do not interfere, my king," Queen Catherine intervened, hastily holding down her husband. Where she stood, she as closely watched and saw the sudden change in their daughter as soon as she set eyes on the little boy. "I think we've found her a cure, my king," she hastily whispered into his ear. "Were you part of the plan, Catherine?" "I'm darling," she said, and focused her gaze to the scene unfolding. The night the king was hysterical and the doctor was called, while the royal household was in commotion, Mr. Charles, the royal male servant, has hastily walked in, unnoticed by the others, and demanded to speak with the Queen, and seeing the urgency in his countenance and tone, the Queen had hurried out with him in a secluded part of the castle, and it was there that Mr. Charles confided in her of his findings. "I found a little boy that can cheer the princess up," he had started. "You must be silly, Charles," the Queen has hastily blurted out, cutting him short. "What do you mean by a boy?" she seriously asked, demanding an answer, her countenance clouded with worries. "He's no ordinary boy, my Queen. And what makes him special? Speak up, Charles. You've outlived everyone present in this household. I've grown in your presence in your service to my father, and have never doubted your judgment. What is so special about this boy? How can she help my child?" She sniffles. "Have faith in me, my Queen. I've made my inquiries and was sure of my findings. Before now," he said, and paused, sorrow filling his countenance. It was like the words were choking him, as he suddenly replied, "The boy is blind, my Queen." He suddenly blurted. The Queen, not expecting, was shocked. She was taken aback as he fixed her gaze at the elderly man in front of her. "What?" she nearly screamed. "That is not all, my Queen. He's a poor commoner, a beggar in the street of Celia." "I must be losing my mind. How can you take advantage of a poor child's situation?" "No, my Queen, it's not what you think. I've known Master Richard for a long time now, and have become acquainted with him. Although blind, my Queen, but his spirit cannot be quietened," the elderly man concluded with pride in his eyes. That was the first time the Queen learnt about the little blind boy that has the spirit that refuses to be subdued by his predicament. A boy with the wildest imagination, his wisdom cannot be ascertained. When he speaks, his words feel like a healing water, capable of melting the coldest ice. Words of wisdom was his day-to-day company, a poor blind beggar boy that has the spirit of a giant. After their conversation that night, and from what Mr. Charles had told the Queen, she had agreed to pay a visit to this special gem of a boy, and was dumbfounded as she watched him speak. Queen Catherine could only but cry as she watched and saw a rare gem about to be wasted, a rare gem hidden in the public eyes, one with a different, no book could have thought him. And from that day, an agreement was reached. The little lad will visit any time the princess throws a tantrum. From the time the little boy Richard walked in, it looked as if a light was lit in the little Princess Mirabel's eyes. All of a sudden, she had quietened down, where she sat curled up in a corner. She suddenly relaxed and straightened her posture in a manner of curiosity as the little lad slowly approached and stood close enough to hear her breathing. "It feels good to be in a castle, isn't it true, Mr. Charles?" the little boy curiously asked. "Very right, my dear," the elderly man answered, swallowing hard his spit as if his words were heavy. "I've only heard about castles and royalties in stories." "Really?" Princess Mirabel suddenly responded cheerfully, her eyes brightening up like a flicker of light, to everyone's astonishment. "Do you happen to have a princess in your castle, Mr. Charles?" little Richard once again asked, totally ignoring the voice of little Princess Mirabel. Good heavens, the elderly man hastily responded in a funny manner that all the people around him could not help but beamed with smile. Little Princess too, although she tried so hard to conceal her excitement. "You mean you have one?" "A very unique one indeed, I must say. She's so special," he added, trying hard to avert his eyes from the princess, who was running her gaze all over their faces. "I've only heard of princesses through stories." "Well, you have one standing right opposite you," the elderly man responded. "Really?" the little lad exclaimed, feigning innocent. "Although he may be blind, but little Master Richard is aware of all the happenings around him. He has gotten used to living a normal life in a tough way. He uses all his senses to navigate his way in life. Although both eyes are wide open, but there is no life in them, young Charles was born blind, abandoned by the mother and leaves at the mercies of foster parents. He was made to beg and fend for himself from an early stage of his life. At the beginning, it was like a nightmare, and could have continued if not. That one day, he stumbled on the kind-hearted Royal Mail servant, Mr. Charles, and from that day on, he bid goodbye to hunger and lack. His coming wearing rags were all staged by the Queen and the mail servant. That would be an unusual sight for the princess, since she has nothing to do with people in her social status. The more reason why they deemed it fit to bring the young lad was his unquieted spirit. Not even his condition was able to silence him. Although blind and struggling, he had fought to see a reason to hold on to life each day. He refused to be pitied, rather he pitied people who has both eyes, but refuses to see the beauty and hope that life has to offer. That was what caught both the Queen and the elderly man's attention. Little Master Richard was a blind boy with a large heart. So, when little Richard saw that he's got the princess' attention, he decided to make a clever move, knowing that he was there on a mission. He was told of the princess and her tantrums, and he had agreed to offer help. "Take me to her," the little lad said, and extended his hand for the elderly man to lead him. And at that point, something spectacular happened, because it was then that everyone in that room realized that the little boy, with a high-pitched voice and a charming smile, is blind. The king was shaken where he stood, realizing what was happening, as he coughed nervously. "Is he really blind, Catherine?" He quickly muttered to his wife, who was close by. "There's nothing to worry about, darling," she consoled, looking into his eyes. "That was what I meant when I said, we've found her a cure." The maids couldn't but help sniffling, their eyes watery and red, and as for little Princess Mirabelle, she was moved to tears, on realizing that the poor-looking boy stand closer to her cannot see. "He can't see me," she suddenly cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's blind!" She almost screamed, sniffling. "Forgive me, my princess, if I have made you sad," little Richard softly said, a corner of his mouth twitching with a smile. "I'm Princess Mirabelle." The little princess politely introduced herself, extending her hand to the little boy. "I'm glad to have met you, Princess Mirabelle," the young lad softly added, and bows, a gesture that touched the very heart of the princess, because to everyone's astonishment, she beamed with smiles and suddenly returned the gesture. "Isn't it strange, Princess?" The unique pitch voice once again rang. "I've heard about princesses through her stories, and now I'm standing closer to one, but I couldn't see her," he softly said and smiled. The princess, too, smiled, concealing her pains. "Allow me to lead you," the princess said, and gently took his hand and walked away, leaving the confused royal household behind, to their shock of the sudden change and transformation of the once grumpy, sad princess. And from that day on, the little Princess of Celia found something to hold on in life. She was taught to appreciate all that life has given to her. By staying closer to little Master Richard, because both became inseparable, she learned to live her life not only for herself but for others, that loves and cherishes her. Learn to appreciate life. Consider living, not only for yourself, but for people that needs and adores you. The end.